In this week's episode of SempreInter, we'll be discussing the matches against Napoli and Spezia. We'll be previewing Hellas game. We've got Patrick Kendrick with us. We'll be talking what we want Inter to do for Christmas. And this week's Moratti, Moggi and Frog, and much, much more. Everything here on Studio Inter, only on SempreInter.com. Benvenuti, bentornati to another edition of Studio Inter. I'm your host Nima, Tavallaey, wishing you welcome back from what has been a really good Inter week. It's been 6 points and very much in the Scudetto race. But before we get to all of that, let me introduce my panelists, starting with our good friend from Canada, producer over on TSN, Mr. Michael Gallo.
Hello, everyone. I'm still having nightmares of Gattuso's glasses from a week ago. But good to be back with you guys.
And we are also joined by our good friend, Mr. Fulvio Santucci. Are you still on Il Nero e Lazzurro or Inter supporters? What do you? Let me know.
It's actually Inter supporters.
Oh, it's Inter supporters now. So. Yeah. How are you? You good?
Yeah, we're fine. Good to be here. It's good to be here after the sixth victory in a row. It doesn't happen to me so much because normally I'm here after a defeat, so it's fine. It's good. Exactly. Life is good today.
Life is good today. And we're also joined by our very good friend, Mr. William Beckman.
It's good, actually, that we got 6 points because this is our first pod of the season, or one of the first, I'd reckon, without Mr. Positivity Mo here. So we don't actually need him for once. So we've benched him. We've got our squad rotation just right for once.
Exactly. When there's so much positivity going around, so he could sit this one out.
We don't need artificially induced positivity this week. We can be organic.
Exactly. And we are also joined by a very good friend of the show. He's a Serie A commentator for the World Feed, and he's been also involved in a fake scandal known as #Thumpgate, making his debut for the first time this season on Studio Inter. Welcome, Mr. Patrick Kendrick.
I think I've played more minutes than Pinamonti now, haven't I? So there you go. Good evening, gents. Great to be here as ever.
It's good to have you. Let's. You did Inter Spezia this weekend, and I mean, after the first 45 minutes, I felt I'm glad you got paid for watching that, because the rest of us kind of wish we had as well, because it was absolutely horrible. But it kind of turned around in the second half. I'm keen to hear what you think about that game generally, now that you've had like 1 or 2 days to think about it.
Well, I was very surprised by the Spezia team sheet. That was the first thing that struck me, because they've always pretty much stayed true to the same 11, and it's always this 4-3-3 system. We saw a load of players that, I mean, I'd done Spezia 3 or 4 times already this season, so I know the team quite well. And all these faces came in. Vignali, I think he'd played once, and Ismaili, the Albanian centre-back, and then there was Acampora and Mora. And I just thought that Vincenzo Italiano was downing tools, to be honest, because their next game is against Genoa. It's a huge game for them. It's a derby. I apologise. Just going to premise this. I know this is an Inter podcast. This is the longest parenthesis to start my point. But essentially, I expected Inter to have the game won by half-time. Although, whilst I was prepping the game, I had obviously seen that there's just a ludicrous amount of goals scored after the 60th minute mark, and Inter tend to finish matches strongly, I think more out of necessity than anything else. So, yeah, that first half really caught me off guard, to be honest, because it was just turgid and it was tepid. And it was something else. If anyone else can come up with an adjective beginning with E, that would be great. But I think I've used up all my alliteration over the last few days. But no, I was really underwhelmed by it, and I thought, dearie me, because I spent, the first. I used a lot of my prep in the first half, put it that way. There wasn't really much to say about what was going on the pitch. And a lot of the narrative had obviously been Inter winning 5 in a row. They'd just won behind Milan, whittled down that 5-point gap to just 1. So you expected Inter to make a statement, put on a big performance. Lest we forget, Juve had won 4-0 the previous evening. And none of that came to pass. And so, obviously, when you get to half-time, if you're an Inter fan watching that, you think, well, what's going to change the game here? Because it's not really like the substitutions have necessarily impacted the game as much as you would like, and you looked at the bench and you thought, well, this is crying out for some inspiration from somewhere. And I didn't necessarily expect it to be Sensi, I have to say.
No, I completely agree with you. But then again, Stefano Sensi has been the catalyst when coming off the bench a few times now. I'm going to hand you over to Will. Will, did you have a question? And more importantly, do you have another adjective to help Patrick out with?
Well, I kept repeating the word turgid myself this afternoon when I was watching this game back. So I can raise you a soporific maybe, but we're going to be.
I'll take it.
Yeah, any of the above. All the ones you said were fine. I did lose concentration about 4 or 5 times in the first.
Tedious.
Half, and indeed the second half. There was one flash of loveliness when in the 51st minute. For the rest of it, it was sort of a bit of a beige nothingness. But no, I was struck in the last 2 games, so I'm including the Napoli game in this as well, about the tiredness. I think that was the theme of the last 2 matches for me, into looking very jaded, struggling to create, waiting for episodes, as it were, to score goals. And I think probably quite a lot of that is reflected in the 2 strikers up front, Lukaku and Lautaro, who've played pretty much every match this season. And I'm just wondering, heading into the January transfer window, obviously Sanchez and Pinamonti were both unavailable yesterday. We hope they'll be back. I mean, it doesn't matter when Pinamonti's back. He could be the only striker of the club, and we still wouldn't play him. So, but I hope Sanchez is back in January. Do you think if a striker is not signed in the January transfer window, and obviously the budget for January is by no means infinite, do you think that could be a deal breaker for Inter and this Scudetto chase? Because it does look already as if there's some tired legs, and we saw that towards the end of last season as well.
It could well be, because it seems to be a deal breaker for him playing that at least 2 up front. Even if he's changed the system slightly, dispensing with the trequartista, it does seem to be that he wants to play Lukaku and Lautaro every week. And then obviously he was using Alexis Sanchez quite well, I thought. But you can't really rely on his fitness. So if you're just having 3 strikers, like you said, and Pinamonti, it's such a shame, because he's shown promise when he has played, more so obviously at Frosinone and then Genoa last season. I just think rather than bringing Pinamonti back, but I guess there were probably some European squad list implications with them doing that. But you just look at Scamacca, and I just think he's wasted at Genoa, and you think, well, if he's not going to play at Sassuolo, that would have been the sort of perfect sort of player to bring in to Inter. So I am concerned about that, if I'm honest, because I think that Inter's squad is pretty deep. There's 2 players per position, but then you look at the front 2, and Lukaku, touchwood, hasn't really had too much of a sort of extended run out of the team with injury. He's been playing. I think I saw a graphic on social media today. He's one of the top 10 players across Europe or something in terms of minutes for this calendar year. I think that probably includes international duty as well. And obviously Inter had that long run to the Europa League final, so that probably plays a part. But yeah, you're sort of crossing your fingers and hoping that the 2 of them stay fit. And I thought Lautaro in particular, apart from that ball into Hakimi's path, I thought he was fairly off colour as well. So you do start to wonder, because they seem to be the main sources of goals as well, beyond Hakimi, who's now got 4. So the short answer is it is a concern, and they do need to bring someone in. But who do you get? Do you bring back Goran Pandev?
No, Graziano Pelle enters the chat. Graziano Pelle enters the chat, or is added by Antonio Conte, is what I would say to that. That's apparently something that could happen in 2020, and it is completely in line with the Arturo Vidal and Alexander Kolarov signings, if you ask me. But and then also, given the financial situation, he coming on a free transfer because his contract expires in China. And we know how much he likes how Antonio Conte and Graziano Pelle get along. So we'll see what happens there. Fulvio, did you have a question for Patrick?
Yeah, Patrick. Hello. So you know very well the fan base, like me, and you know that at some point of every season there will be, or there has been, or there will be a bit of buzzing about Brozovic and his performance. So I have the impression, and I want to share with you this to understand your opinion, that I have the impression that the Inter's offensive play depends a lot from the performances of Marcelo Brozovic. If Brozovic is in a good mood and a good shape, Inter has an acceptable offensive play, efficient, probably not perfect, but still efficient. While when Brozovic is in a bad day, in a bad mood, in a bad shape, basically the style of play of Inter is rubbish. So I want to accelerate the process because I know for sure that at some point we're gonna talk about Brozovic. I think, and I have the suspect that in some way is still a key player for this team and should not be like that, because my opinion is not consistent enough to be the key player of a team that wants to lift trophies. So if you picture the Inter of next season, is Marcelo Brozovic there, or do you think that removing Brozovic and adding another key player in the same zone of the pitch could be beneficial for the Inter style of play? What do you think about?
I'm a big fan of Marcelo Brozovic. I'm sorry to say. I think that was probably Spalletti's two greatest legacies to the current team and the current coach were, putting Brozovic in that deep-lying playmaker role, because before that he'd been so sort of, no one really knew where to put him. And then that was a sort of situation that we revisited with João Mario, and that never was really resolved. Whereas Brozovic was put in front of the back four and he just became this brilliant deep-lying playmaker and almost a magnet for the ball. I remember that, Inter would occasionally look like being caught out in transition and somehow he would have already sprinted to where the ball was going to be. It's a similar sort of knack to good strikers have when they sort of drift into the right area of the box and the ball just seems to travel all the way to them. They read the trajectory and they score or what have you. So he seems to have really good attributes in terms of anticipation. I think he can pick a pass. I do think he can set the tempo. But yeah, I think he probably has suffered as well with the slight chopping and changing. Barella's brilliant and Barella's all action, and he doesn't really... I think the one area where Barella probably falls down is his positional sense, because he just wants to do everything and he can do everything. So I don't really... In some ways, Brozovic probably benefits more from playing alongside someone like Gagliardini, who's very much, on rails, just goes up and down and side to side, and there's not really much more to it than that. I can see the point you're making in terms of consistency. If you are to win trophies, especially Serie A, you need someone in a key position like that to play well week in, week out, and occasionally that's probably been the only area where his game's fallen down. He can go missing. But if you're bringing in someone else into that position, you then need to anticipate the fact that unless you're bringing someone in domestically, then they're going to take a while to settle in. And even if you do bring them in from another Serie A club, they still have to get used to the unique environment that is Inter. I think we're all familiar with what that entails.
Yeah, definitely are.
So I would think if you are to do that, then there might be a case of signing someone in January. But this is where Nima's going to cut me off and say, there's no scope to sign anyone in January.
There's no money. There's no money. No dinero. No
dinero.
Exactly. If in a wonderful, magical world where the checkbook was opened, it would be a good time to bring someone in now and sort of have Brozovic hold their hand and gradually introduce them to the team there. But you'd need it to be someone the right age as well. I mean, there's a lot been said about this Nicolò Rovella of Genoa, but I mean, he's 19, I think. So, I mean, someone like that is, or he might even be a 2002. I can't recall. But
what about Locatelli? I mean, I think he'd be perfect.
Yeah, but I think he'll cost you 50 million. That's the problem.
But you said the perfect world. In a perfect world.
Oh, okay, we're still on that. Then yeah, then I bow down to your suggestion. Bring him in and rile the Milanisti at the same time. Double whammy.
No, but seriously, I mean, there is an issue there because of COVID and also because of the restrictions put in by the Chinese government about the export of capital from China. Suning's hands are tied. They can't do more than they've done. And with Raja Nainggolan, the situation being as it is there, Matias Vecino, etc., Inter need to focus on shifting players out. But at the same time, they have a pressing need for a left wing back and a backup striker. And as you said, a midfielder long term. which is kind of why I don't think Inter will win the Scudetto, because there are too many question marks around this team. I'm keen to hear, before I pass you over to Mike, where do you think Inter will end up because of all these question marks that exist?
Second, I think it's going to be the same top two as last season. Although, if I'm honest, I feel like Inter's second place finish last season was slightly misleading, and that final table was really weird. It reminds me of, because obviously Juventus had the league sewn up with 2 games to go. It reminds me of many years ago. I don't know if it might have been 97, 98, or it might have been 2002. Someone with better knowledge of the Premier League would know better than me, but I seem to recall Arsenal losing their last 3 games and United finishing a point behind them. It was when Wenger was at his peak, and it's sort of one of those. It's like you can almost expect a team when they've won the league to just completely change the team, and then and then obviously it's the media trying to fuel talk of a lengthy title race, but all over the summer you're reading about 82 points and Inter's best season. It's all true. It's objective data, and I think that probably Inter may have in some ways benefited from that Europa League campaign coming after the end of Serie A, if that makes sense. I almost feel like they played themselves into form with those Serie A games, and they almost had more riding on the league matches, with the idea that then they were going to go on and play competitive action going for a trophy. And I think that's why they went all the way to the final. So there are positives. I just think Juventus Pirlo's come in, it's taken him a while, he's changed the system a little bit, and yet they're still unbeaten. I don't think the Napoli game will be replayed, so they've won that one. And had they played at that time, it's a Napoli side slightly in disarray now, not to take anything away from Inter's achievement of beating them on Wednesday. So I think it might be the top 2, but I don't see Milan staying the course. And I think the others are just too inconsistent. I think in terms of, let's be honest, Conte is very good at getting results, whether you like it or not, his style of play and how he goes about it. But I think that Inter's benchmark with Conte will always be 80 plus points. I think they'll get that again this season. And I think that Juventus will inevitably go on to win 10 in a row. I could be wrong, and I think for the benefit of the league and for those of us, paid to cover it, it would be fantastic to see someone else win it. Because whilst I've been working on Serie A, I've only ever known Juventus as champions. So I think second is probably the ceiling, and I think my notion of that is reinforced after seeing yesterday's game as well. I'm sorry to say.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, I can't put Inter as title favourites there. I'm not saying they won't challenge. I think they'll come up short.
What I think. I think Inter's goal is top 4 this season. This is still my vision. So I think 2. I'd take a second place in a heartbeat. Mike, did you have a question for Patrick?
Yeah, Patrick, I got 2 questions for you. Most importantly, on a Monday night in Milan, which I believe is where you are, what's your beverage of choice while doing an Inter podcast?
That's a great question to start. I'm actually drinking Ichnusa Anima Sarda, but not the non-filtered version. I assume this is filtered. Because it's very in vogue at the moment. This Ichnusa non filtrata, and I find it just a little bit too bitter for my taste. So I've got a nice Ichnusa with the 4 Moors. So Barella, Sau, Deola, and whoever the other one is, I can't even think. Not Nico Yanis. He's an honorary Sal, an honorary Sardo rather. But there you go. So there, Ichnusa is. I drained all the Moretti, to be fair. So I was.
That's what I was hoping for. So my actual question for you is, I like to focus on referee decisions. I'm a former referee, and
okay.
And in this game, I thought Inter dodged a bullet early late in the first half when Brozovic was already on a yellow, and he got away with a pretty reckless challenge that could have seen him sent off. What do you think? Should he have been sent off for that challenge in the Spezia game?
I thought possibly. I think he was saved slightly by the fact that it was Spezia's last man. I seem to recall. He was trying to win the ball high up the pitch, so it was a Spezia central defender, if I'm not mistaken, and Brozovic was leading the press. So I think that's probably the only thing that saved him. But it's funny you mentioned that, because when I'm commentating, I always take notes of what's going on and yellow cards and all that sort of thing. And I did Roma Sassuolo a few weeks ago, and Pedro got booked very early on. He kicked Berardi in the throat. I don't know if any of you saw the game or remember that. That was the first challenge very early on. And then Maxime Lopez was leading a counter for Sassuolo. And I just instinctively said, Pedro put his arm on his shoulder, and I said, Pedro, happy to take the yellow card with a tactical foul. And then I immediately realised, I said, of course he's not. He's already been booked. So that was probably shouldn't be broadcasting my mistakes on this podcast, but there you go. So all that is to say that my eye was very attuned to that, because then, funnily enough, I had another one this week with young Wilfried Sango of Torino, who got sent off after about 19 minutes, I think 14 minutes against Roma. So I thought, bloody hell, this keeps happening. This is going to be 3 matches I've done, and there's going to be 3 separate sendings off for 2 yellow cards in the first half, which is, let's be honest, it's fairly rare.
Very rare.
Do I think it was a second booking? I think the foul probably warranted a yellow card in isolation, but I think possibly because Inter were playing at home, who was it? Michael Fabri, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And possibly because of where it was on the pitch. And I think it was on Claudio Terzi. I don't think he made too much of it. I seem to recall Vincenzo Italiano making more of it from the technical area, but that's where Spezia were a bit naive, if you ask me. Now, this is going to sound really cynical, and I probably shouldn't be promoting this, but if you're a Spezia fan, you want to see 3 or 4 of your players immediately running over, hounding the referee, being like, what on earth is going on? And then maybe you can just influence him if you get there in time in that split second of doubt, and then he goes, actually, that is a second yellow card. I'm going to send you off. But as I said, Terzi didn't make a lot of it. If you contrast that to, or if you compare it rather to what Spinazzola did, jumped up in the air and wailed, and then Sango got sent off for Torino, and the Pedro one was just not even debatable at all. It's just a cynical foul from behind to stop a counter-attack. So a weird spate of those, and I think Inter probably did get a bit lucky, but in some ways I feel like that would have probably focused the mind and forced the issue. Sometimes it can be counterintuitive with a big team goes down to 10 and it's just like, right, let's just sort this out. This is a show of character, and
the Napoli game on Wednesday.
Exactly, yeah. So we'll never know, but I do think it was slightly the sort of Brozovic of old, the losing his head a little bit, and I thought, why has he gone in there? There's no need to be so overeager.
No, I agree with you, and I remember tweeting to someone, I was like, he's so getting sent off in the second half because of this, but luckily he wasn't. But if we zoom out a little bit and look at the entire season in the Serie A, you already said your top 2. Who do you think is going to finish 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th?
Oh wow, you've put me on the spot here. I was quite enjoying Roma before that capitulation in Bergamo yesterday. So it's very hard to know. I don't like Lazio. I'm just going to put that out there. I'm not a huge fan, and that's going to hurt you, Nima, because I know you're a Simone Inzaghi fan.
Oh, I love him. Love him.
Oh no.
Yeah, Simone for me.
I love Will's withering comments like that. Just no, that's great. I just think
he was linked to us, wasn't he, early this week?
He was. Yeah,
and that made me really happy. That made me really, really happy.
I tweeted during the week, if we get him, I'm going over to cover curling for the rest of the day.
Oh, come on.
Oh. It's a bit one-dimensional for my liking, but there you go. I think they're often bailed out by their big players, Acerbi at the back, and then Luis Alberto in midfield and Immobile up front, to be honest. And anyway, Atalanta look good, but it's whether they can sustain that. I expect they probably will once they've got all this soap opera out the way. But Gasperini's flexing his muscles, and Italy. I don't know if you guys remember the whole period of whenever a manager threatened to stay at a big club for more than 2 or 3 years and was winning trophies. It was, they found their Ferguson, and they seem to have stopped doing it now. But I actually think Gasperini is the closest thing we have to Ferguson in Italy, to be honest. So I'm not surprised that he's just forcing out Alejandro Gomez in the style of Beckham or Stam or whoever you want all that basically. So I think Atalanta will come in the top 4. I don't know if it'll be 3rd or 4th. Just because I think they've got a lot of quality in the team. So that leaves me with 1 and
Milan, Roma, Napoli?
It's gonna have to be Milan, isn't it? I'd almost forgotten about them there. I was gonna say my heart says Napoli, but it's Milan. It's Milan, I think, because of the way they've started, and I think they'll avoid defeat against Lazio, and then you get to the Juve game, which I think is on Epiphany, so they'll have another game before that, Benevento away, if memory serves, and I just think it's one of those where Milan have gone so long unbeaten that they've just built up a bit of a cushion, and then you start to look. I mean, they won't be looking there already, but if you're a Milan fan and you think, I want to get back in the Champions League, you're already looking at the cushion between where you are now and fourth place, and it's starting to open up a bit, especially with Napoli and Roma both dropping points. You know, those results really worked out in Milan's favour. So I think those are probably... I think the top three at the moment will definitely be those three, and then it's between probably Napoli and Atalanta. And you wanted sixth as well, didn't you? So I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to go Juventus, Inter, Milan, Atalanta, Napoli, Roma.
It is going to be a top. I mean, this year is going to be really, really tight in the top six. We know that because it's both in terms of transition and everything else surrounding it. It does feel like it's more going to be tighter than it's ever been for those top six positions. Who do you think? Do you think Ronaldo's going to become capocannoniere, or do you think it's Ibra or Lukaku?
I don't think it's Ibra. I don't think he can stay fit enough. Unfortunately, again, Nima's just dagger after dagger to your heart tonight, isn't it?
He doesn't need to play 38 games. He plays 6, scores 10. If he continues
he's a lion.
like that.
He's a lion, isn't he?
No, if he only needs to play 20 games, he scored like 60 goals. Then if he continues like this,
true. That's the sort of analysis that a 9-year-old makes when they've just watched their first football match. It's like, oh, Atalanta beat us 4-0. But then Atalanta lost 6-0 to Benevento, so we'll beat Benevento 10-0, do you know what I mean, or whatever it is. Exactly. I think I've done the maths all wrong on that, so maybe edit that out of the final.
No. We can't.
I think Ronaldo will, to be honest, because he just looks so hungry for it, and probably a bit slighted. This is season 3, so I think, all right, you can legislate for Immobile scoring 36 goals and winning, especially when I think he got 31. Did he get 31? Maybe more than that. But it's harder to make a case for being outscored by Quagliarella, I think, which it was in his first year, wasn't it? It was 26, I seem to recall. And Quagliarella's older than Ronaldo as well. Quagliarella's an 83, Ronaldo's an 85. So I think he's determined to prove a point with that, and I think he wants to. And the way he's going as well, I mean, that's 12 goals already now. It's a really anomalous year with that. It feels like we've gone completely the other way in Serie A, where it used to be if you scored 20 goals, you're doing well in the Italian top flight. Now it's just players are scoring a goal a game, if not more than that, and it's I think it possibly speaks to the slightly diminished quality of the league with some of the sides in the bottom half, and B, it's clearly symptomatic of this spate of penalties that we're getting. I mean, there's just so many, really. So I think that Ronaldo will probably edge out Lukaku, but I could see Lukaku getting closer to 30 this year.
So before we let you go, Coppa Italia, how do you think that's going to end? Do you think Inter will win a title this year?
Got a real soft spot for the Coppa Italia. Do I think Inter will win the Coppa Italia? I'm not sure they will. There's something not quite right about Inter in the Coppa Italia. I don't know what it is. That weird exit to Lazio on penalties, then losing to Napoli. I have no idea how Inter went out to Napoli in that second leg. I have no idea. That was ludicrously one-sided. I seem to recall Meret making about 4 or 5 unbelievable saves. And then, no, it wasn't Meret. It was
Ospina. It was a game of his life.
He made a howler on the corner. He threw that Eriksson corner into his net. That's right. And he was picked because of his feet. And then he was justified because he pinged one out to Insigne, who rolled it to Mertens. That's right. So, but he made some unbelievable saves, having started with a howler. And Napoli were better in the first leg. I did the first leg. Fabian Ruiz scored that great goal. But the second leg, I just thought Inter are going to win this 4 or 5-1. And I could not believe that they didn't, to be honest. So and they even went out on aggregate. I thought, well, at least they'll 2-1, maybe they'll and they might go through on away goals, but they just couldn't score again. So I could be wrong. The Coppa Italia I find is the hardest competition to call, because they'll all come in at the round of 16. They'll all play slightly weakened teams. Inter away at Fiorentina, which is probably one of the best ties they could have got, given how bad Fiorentina are and where they are in the league, really. And if I'm not mistaken, that's on the 13th, and we've got games on the 3rd, the 6th, and the 10th of January. So it's going to be all go in the new year, which makes me think that they'll both play weakened teams, and the only chance Fiorentina had in that game was playing a strong team against Inter's weakened team. And it's hard to know, because Juventus normally breeze through the first couple of rounds, and then suddenly they're in the semi-finals, and once they get into the semi-finals, they just tend to focus on winning the competition. But it'd be nice to see someone else win it again. So Lazio a couple of years ago, and then Napoli last year. We had Juventus the year prior to that. It would be great if this competition starts to be, but I think again that's an indication of the fact that teams are taking it a lot more seriously now. For me, it was ludicrous that Juventus went 20 years without winning a Coppa Italia, and then they sort of made up for lost time. And all of the other clubs, you just think this is. I remember it's one of my favourite. It's one of my favourite quotes, actually. Well, first of all, I'm going to quote a really niche golfing rom-com, which if you haven't seen, you must watch it, even if you don't like golf. It's called Tin Cup with.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, with Kevin Costner and Rene Russo. Cheech Marin and Don Johnson as well. He plays the bad guy. Tin Cup and Roy Tin Cup McAvoy, who's the journeyman club golf pro who lives in Winnebago. He actually says he decides to qualify for the US Open, and when they say he's mad, he's like, no, this is. The US Open's not only the greatest golf tournament in the world, it's the most democratic, right? Which contrasts with what Maurizio Sarri said when he was Empoli coach at that time. It was back when, I mean, they've phased it out gradually, thank God. But Sarri was absolutely raging in a press conference once, because he said, the Coppa Italia is the least democratic football tournament in the world. Not even in South America do you see something so ridiculous, which was sort of slight thinly veiled racism, I thought, as well, which is quite interesting, or at least discrimination. And then he went on to actually argue his point, which is quite true. He said, you are seeded based on your results in the previous season for a completely separate competition. The top 8 from Serie A being seeded for the Coppa Italia, going straight into the last 16 in the new year is bizarre. It's a bizarre notion. And up until a couple of years ago, when they're now making draws for who plays at home, but again, 6 or 7 ties out of 8 are always the big team, the seeded team playing at home. I don't really know how that works. God, I'm going to get sacked with all of these revelations. God, I literally two sips of Ichnusa and I'm anyone's. Anyway, sorry, yeah.
They did that draw, and of the 8 seeded teams, Inter were the only team that got switched to play away from home. All the other big teams were at home. To be. So obviously, yeah,
because they have no strong presence in the Lega Calcio.
Yes.
That's why. That's why.
Where was Marotta?
Exactly. But just to finish that, so Sarri was saying exactly that. So given all of that, I don't understand why the top 8 from the previous year are not just thinking, let's win the Coppa Italia. We can go through in the last 16. Invariably, we're going to be playing at home. Then we have to win a quarter-final. Then we have a 2-legged semi and a final that we might be able to win on penalties. The final was a bizarre game last year. And, no one remembers that it was a pretty terrible game. Milik scores the winning penalty. I think Meret saved from Dybala. And that's job done, really. So I think it's there for the taking. I think Inter should be going all out to win that. I'd see, especially now with no European football, just play your strongest team. Play your strongest team and go and win that competition. Get it out the way. Get rid of the bloody 10 years of not winning a trophy, because lest we forget, in May it's going to be exactly 10 years since that win over Palermo in the Coppa Italia. Nice bit of symmetry. All right, we had a decade with no silverware, but we've got rid of that. And then suddenly, all those Twitter accounts with X number of days since Inter won a trophy. That goes back to 0, and it's quite nice. Wipe the slate clean, as we will in 2021. And I'm going to sign off with that.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Patrick. It
My
was great
pleasure.
to have you.
Always delighted.
And if people want to follow you on Twitter, we've got something coming on because you're doing a bit of work for, is it BT Sport or who is it?
I have been, but I'm not sure if I'll be there for the knockout rounds. But yeah, I did a few games reporting for BT for their Champions League coverage. The benefits of living in Italy and not being restricted with a travel corridor. Yeah, it's my main strength, shall we say, were the logistical ease with which I could move around Europe, as opposed to any sort of any journalistic talents. So there we go. On that bombshell.
Oh dear. Thank you so much, man. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Cheers, gents. All the best.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care. Thank you so much. That was Patrick Kendrick, our good friend, who you can listen to. He does the Serie A, and he's probably, I mean, we've had quite a few of the commentators on. They're all good, but I really think Patrick is one of the best out there, regardless of which league you support. Let's focus a little bit on the Napoli game, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, Fulvio, because to me, I've been saying this for a couple of weeks, and I think it started against Sassuolo, and I think we see it now more and more. The Inter under Conte have become some sort of, what, if you remember Andrea Stramaccioni's, when he was really upset that they said that Inter played provincial. Inter played provincial with Antonio Conte. I don't personally have a problem with it because I don't think Inter are going to win the Scudetto. For me, it's top 4. But against Napoli, when you're a goal up and you're down to, and your opponent is down to 10 men, and you play a 5-4-1, if that's not provincial, what is?
Yeah, Nima, the whole game was provincial, to be honest, because also Napoli came here with a provincial attitude, despite being with a lineup that could look like differently. But the reality is that they put a double defensive midfielder just steps ahead to the defense. I'm talking about Diego Dem and Bakayoko. So basically, that was a start game for both teams. Who knows what could happen with Dries Mertens in the pitch for 90 minutes? We never know about that. But basically, the match was like that. I'm pretty sure that Conte prepared the match like that. In order to block the Napoli kind of attack. I think that we now can consider that leave the ball to the contenders. I mean, not in the area, of course, not in our area, but in the midfield is a precise choice, because we see also against Spezia yesterday. Basically, Spezia made a lot of last a lot of time with the ball in the feet. So it's a precise choice, and I mean it could have worked, because Inter never suffered until he find the goal with Lukaku, and after that, what happened? I think that Conte is responsible with that. And I think that the team mislead probably what Conte had in mind, because basically they went down on the field of 10-15 meters in the last 15 minutes, and they are not used to play like this, not anymore, and they panic for this reason, because they basically lost the direction of what they needed to do. I mean, Conte is responsible, yes, but I'm pretty sure that the basic idea was to utilize Lukaku to just keep the ball. I mean, in the Napoli side of the field. But the thing is that Lukaku was basically run out of gasoline and did not do this kind of work. And I mean, probably if Conte have had another striker, a physical striker like Lukaku, he probably went with a different substitution, but was not like that. Of course, that could be worse. and of course that could have been a huge mistake. But at the end of the day, I think that Inter, if we see the perspective of the season, Inter struggled on the defense like 1 month and a half ago. Struggled on the defense and did not have any problem to score goals. Against Napoli, we see the complete opposite. Inter did very well on the defense until the goal, until the Lukaku's goal, of course. So it's basically three-fourths of the game, and did not basically do anything to score goals. So that's quite the opposite problem now. But anyway, I think that the match show two things, and the two lacks. To be honest, two lacks that this team have, missing players, because Sensi was a game changer, basically, right? The game plan of Napoli was to send Inter on the sides, and basically the play was that when it was on the side, and Gattuso was successful in this. But when when Brozovic went out and Sensi come in, so it was like 60 of the game. Basically, the first time that Sensi went into a central aisle, let's call it like that, Darmian found the penalty, and so that was a proof that Sensi is a game changer. When it's Sensi, and that kind of player can really turn upside down this team. And the second evidence for me was that you cannot avoid, not anymore, a striker in January, because. As I said at the beginning of this opinion, if Conte had had a striker available in the bench, he could have lined that striker and replacing Lukaku instead of Hakimi Lautaro substitution. I'm pretty convinced about that.
Graziano Pelle. That's the answer.
Yeah, I mean that's something. You know when you talk about Conte, you always have the same name. Like it's not Giaccherini, because basically Giaccherini is retired, right? But it's only the same name with Conte. It was Moses, and actually we came out with Moses last year. It was Moses, it was Pelé, and yeah, let's say, but not Pelé, of course. But the physical shape of this striker could look like that, and I think Inter cannot avoid anymore to have a striker like that, because when you have Lukaku, you play on Lukaku when you are out of other ideas, and if you have another kind of player like that, probably it's not Lukaku, probably it's not the same strength, but you can continue trying to play like that, and be a little more, have a little more depth into the striker department.
No, I agree. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, we joke about Graziano Pelle because it's Antonio Conte and all that, but Inter needs.
I was a big fan of Olivier Giroud last January. I don't know if I say also here in Studio Inter, but I say if we don't take Giroud now, we're gonna regret it for at least 1 year. And that's exactly what happened.
Absolutely, and I agree with that. I think Giroud would have been excellent at that time, but instead they decided to go with Christian Eriksen, and everything turned out brilliantly, and everyone was happy, and it was a success. So what can we say? No, but seriously, Will, I want to hear your thoughts on the Napoli game, because to me, I think Inter were. To me, this is why Inter won't win the Scudetto. Exactly this, because you cannot build a team that wins a title on luck, and Inter were lucky at the end against Napoli. And I know we've gone about 40 minutes into this pod without mentioning the magic of Samir Handanovic. Those two saves was peak Handanovic at his best. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought the one on Insigne was incredible. Those sort of give us another example of his incredible cat-like reflexes that we sort of had left behind 2 or 3 years ago. Obviously, in previous episodes, I think we were talking a lot about his reluctance to dive for shots, and with both of these saves that he had at the end of the Napoli game, he didn't have to move. They were pretty much straight at him. He just had to react, and he did both of those saves really well. I think one of them there was a foul in the build-up for one of them that I think that should have been called. But anyway, yeah, he was decisive in that game. Handanovic is an Inter player. Sometimes you have to rely on your keeper. So that isn't luck. But yes, overall, I think if you replay that game several times, we probably won't win it. Mertens went off right at the start. They had to bring on Petagna instead, who's absolutely not Dries Mertens. Insigne had his Vaffa moment with the referee and got sent off. There was a post. It was if that's what we are at our maximum, then yes, we will not win the league. You can't win that game very often in a season. But firstly, just before I forget, I did say this would be a terrible match last week, so I'd like to just big up my own prediction because we were talking about this last week. I said it was going to be defensive and horrible, and it was awful for an hour. And without that penalty, it was a 0-0. It was the nil-nilliest of nil-nils that was ruined by a penalty. But we were lucky to win that game, and it's not something that you can build on. But look, if you look at the bigger picture, these are 6 wins in a row. 6 wins in a row where you've finally found some defensive solidity. You can win 1 or 2 games because of luck, but 6 in a row is not a coincidence. So I definitely think that there is a chance still that we win this league. I'm not sure we're the favourites, but I'm fairly encouraged about the direction the team is going in. I think Conte, it's not great football. He's gone back to doing what he knows best, and if he's going to fail, he's going to fail with his own ideas, and that's more reassuring, I think, for me, as opposed to if you compare it to the strange sort of hybrid attacking weirdness that we had at the start of the season. I feel more comfortable watching this team now, despite the fact that it's pretty turgid. And yeah, feeling reasonably confident overall, I must say, despite acknowledging that was, if there was a team that they need to win that match, it was probably Napoli, but they didn't. We've had games this year where we probably deserved to win and we haven't. So it was the other way around for once. So fine.
For sure. Mike, any closing arguments on the Napoli game?
Yes, closing arguments is the way I'm going to put it. Look, Inter were lucky. They shouldn't have had 3 points in this game. There was absolutely zero reason why they should have had 3 points in this game. And they are very fortunate with Will mentioned with Mertens going off early, like not just early, but he was off in the first 10 minutes, and that changed a lot. When you've got your leading, your top striker go out and you got to replace him with Petagna, everything's going to change. But I don't even know how, they were the better team in this game, even when they went down to 10 men. Even after Insigne got sent off, which I was trying to figure out what he got sent off for. I know it was obviously abusive language towards the official. I think Gattuso said afterwards, he said something that he told the ref to F off or something. And he was complaining. He had some comments about if you say that in Scotland, it's not a problem, but for some reason in Italy it is. I found that it was really funny in the comments. But anyways, Inter were very lucky. If Handanovic didn't make those, I think it was 2 or 3 big saves. That nice one on Politano as well. That was really nice. They had no business winning this game. Even Petagna, of all people, he should have scored in the 92nd minute. They were not the better team. They were lucky they would have been lucky to get a draw at that point. But we've been critical with Handanovic over the years, and he got Inter 3 points today, and it was because of him. If it wasn't for him, they would have not got 3 points. Those were some great saves, and we're very fortunate. And Darmian made a nice play on the penalty, I thought. Very smart play to go in and kind of, he knew Ospina was going to have to make a play on him. And Darmian's been, very well. He's been a great player the last, month and a half. I know he made a mistake kind of in the Spezia game at the very end when he came on, but look, Inter were very lucky, and this is one that you take the 3 points and you run fast. Amen.
Couldn't agree more.
It was very reminiscent, I thought, of it was one of those games we had a lot with Mancini in his second season when we were top at Christmas without having ever played well, where Handanovic was in Spider-Man mode, and we scored with our only shot on goal, and nobody could really understand why we were top of the league. The last 2 games actually were pretty similar to that, although I think this team has got a bit more quality. It's back to that kind of pattern.
Might I make a point? May I make a point here, because I think that we need to remember here what is the situation of the season. I think it's pretty normal that now we are playing like that, because basically we have people, and I mean probably 80% of the whole roster that is playing each 3 days since 3 months. I mean, Barella probably is not getting a decent rest since 1 year and a half now. So I think that at some point Conte was with the shoulder on the wall, and just go with the style of play that he knows more, and to make this compromise, right? I need results right now. The team is practically dead because we have a lot of people that really need to rest. No more depth in the team because of other issues like Vecino, which is injured, and Nainggolan, which is practically out of the team. But he takes the wages, but he's out of the team. And Eriksen is a case, something like that. Pinamonti is out since 1 month and a half, and is basically the first striker, and he had like 10 minutes in all the season with this team. So I think that it's a compromise right now. And I think that Conte chose to restore the balance into this team, and this was successful. And sacrifice a bit of offensive production. It's a compromise, but for the moment it's successful. I don't think that we're going to see this kind of team even in the next month. I mean, I feel a little bit like Mo by doing this, but I really believe this. I feel like Mr. Positivity, but I really believe that this is not the version of Inter that is reliable for all the season. I think that Inter should go ahead with the gear like in February, March, and show something different, of course, because otherwise, I agree with you. You cannot win the league. You cannot win the league with an attitude like that. But for the time being, I think that it's pretty normal to see a team like this. What is probably not so normal, or probably it is, but we're not used to that, is that playing like this, we get results. I mean, I remember a lot of games play a little bit better. Even in the Champions League, like a couple of games was played better than this last games, but the victory wasn't there. So I think that I agree with. I agree when you say just keep the 3 points, run fast, and don't look behind. And I think that's what I'm doing. These points are important to win the league, because you are achieving these points while you're not prepared to do that. And this is very important when you look at the perspective of 38 games.
For sure. One before we quickly move on, we interplay Hellas Verona that I'm very impressed with. Ivan Juric, I think, has done an absolutely fantastic job these past 2 years at Hellas, transforming them without having any, that much quality to work with, transforming them, especially this season, into a very solid Serie A team, and who are really difficult to break down, and a team that Inter usually struggle against. Without going too much into it, what are we thinking? I think that it's going to be a draw. I don't see Inter winning this game. I think it's going to stay at six wins and a draw, because because Inter have this incredible habit of destroying, whenever we play before Christmas for the past 10 years, it's been the nightmare before Christmas. And I don't know. I don't have a good feeling about this at all. What do you think, Will?
Yeah, I agree. I think it would draw. I don't think a draw is necessarily a disastrous result, given that we have just won these 6 games in a row, and because if you look at Hellas's form this season, they are the Ammazza Grandi of this season. They've drawn with Juventus, they've drawn with Milan, they've drawn with Roma. Obviously, that became a win because of the Roma's clerical, but on the pitch they drew with Roma, and they've beaten Lazio, Atalanta away from home. So they haven't actually lost against any of the big teams they've played this season. Second best defence behind Juventus. Marco Silvestri, who I know you're a big fan of, is on fire at the moment in goal. They have got a lot of absentees up front. I think Di Carmine, Favilli and Kalinic are all out injured, so they're going to be a bit short of options, just like we are up front. But yeah, they're very difficult to break down. They've got this guy Adrien Tamezer, who nobody really heard of, who's been a bit of a revelation in the last couple of weeks in midfield. They've got. I noticed that Verona have the. You said they're difficult to break down. They've got the lowest goals per game record in Serie A this season. I.e., their games are the ones with the fewest goals in them. Out of all the 20 clubs in Serie A, only 2.23. So I don't think this will be a goal fest for all those reasons. And yes, I wouldn't be surprised at all if it's a draw. I think it would be a really impressive achievement to get a 7th win here. I mean, Conte pretty much said it himself on Sunday. He was really pushing on this sort of this theory about Inter being tied. He said we've had this block of 10 games, and we just need to grit our teeth and produce one final push to get us over the line to Christmas, and then reset and hopefully find some energy again. So, if it's another sort of awful, turgid 1-0 win, that would do me just fine. If it's a draw,
I don't care. Don't get me wrong.
It's a draw,
I couldn't care less how Inter win, how it looks. I mean, when I say it's provincial, I'm not putting any moral value in that. I don't care about that. I just want them to win.
I agree to conclude. I think it's most likely to be a draw, possibly 1-1.
Well, I'm thinking 1-1 as well. I think Zaccagni is bound to score, and Lukaku will get one as well.
That's exactly what I've got written down here. Zaccagni and Lukaku.
What about you, Fulvio? Where are you?
Yeah, basically I have your same opinion. I figure out a draw, but I figure out a goalless draw. So 0 each. 0-0.
Even better.
Or probably 1-0 with a penalty or something like that. At least that is what I wish. But what I realistically foresee is a goalless draw.
I just remember Roberto Mancini a few years back when Inter were top of the league and then lost against Lazio just before Christmas, and he went out and said, "We've ruined Christmas for ourselves."
We ruined Christmas in this exact stadium 2 years ago against Chievo. I really hated that one. Was it Pellissier in the last minute?
Yeah.
But guys, be aware that this year the situation is the same, but for AC Milan, for Milan, because Milan is playing against Lazio in San Siro in the match before Christmas as it's top of the league. So why the history could not repeat on the other side of Milan?
But they don't have Felipe Melo starting in midfield to give away a kung fu kick penalty. So
I was there at the stadium. I remember.
Oh God!
I was there, and when he did that, everyone around me said, "What the F is Felipe Melo doing?" Like that was the genuine consensus. Everyone was, "What is wrong with him?"
He's Lazio.
And we can see the goal to Candreva.
From a short corner. Yeah.
I remember that, Candreva, and then Mancini's. We've ruined Christmas for ourselves. Right. What about you, Mike? What do you think's gonna happen? What's your prediction?
I thought I was gonna go off the board with a draw, but since everyone's taken that, I'm not going to now. Well, look, I just looked. I've watched Verona, I think once or twice this year. I was impressed. I was not aware about those recent injuries that I think Will mentioned. But I will say I looked at Verona's last 7 games. Each of those 7 games have ended with 2 or 3 goals in them. So that would only mean to me a 1-1 draw, which you guys have already selected, so I'm not going to pick that. So the other option is to pick a 2-1 victory. So that's what I'm going with, 2-1 victory, and we will get a substitute winner from D'Ambrosio.
Of course, in the far post and a corner.
Yes, on a corner.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that. Right, I wanted to touch a little bit. I mean, we are recording. This is the last episode we're recording before Christmas, and I was thinking if we could wish, freely, going into the Mercato in January, one player. One player or one player you want Inter signed or one player you want Inter to leave. Basically, one thing you want to happen in the January Mercato. And I'm going to start with you, Fulvio.
Wow, I wasn't prepared for this. Well, if I can dream everything, probably I think that under the Christmas tree, I would like to find the tiny N'Golo Kante from Chelsea. That's probably that's not my favorite player, but it's probably Conte's favorite player, which is really relevant.
Where's Mike Giuliucci when we need him? He was blasting this deal earlier in the season, wasn't he? Yeah.
So, Will, what about you?
Well, I'm torn between two, but because I asked Patrick about the striker situation, I will pray for Olivier Giroud under the Christmas tree, because I don't really want him to leave Chelsea because they happen to be my other team. But if I've got an Inter hat on, I think he would be perfect. I think while we could do with a midfielder, I think that would be a survivable problem if Stefano Sensi were to become a professional footballer again. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed for him to stay fit from now on, because he's been pretty good in the last couple of games. So I think the more pressing issue in terms of something that we need but don't have is a backup striker. And I think Giroud would allow Conte to rotate Lukaku and not have to change his style of play too much. Obviously, no two players are the same, but generally speaking, Giroud could do a similar kind of work to Lukaku. So it's not the most sort of outlandish dream, but because obviously we were close to him last year. But I think that's my wish for Mr. Babbo Natale.
Great call, Will. And mark my words, Stefano Sensi, if he managed to become a professional football player, like Will was saying, is the key to win the Scudetto. Mark my words.
Absolutely, couldn't agree with you more. And the issue is the fitness. That's the problem. He's
Course.
Inter's Ming Vase. That's the thing. He breaks really easily, but he's really pretty to look at. Mike,
my Christmas gift is now made public, because my Christmas gift that I've always wanted was for Stefano Sensi to play 70 minutes again in a match. And we're getting closer, but I'm hoping that in January he's able to play 65 minutes, 70 minutes, or who knows, maybe even 80. I want him to be healthy. I don't care what it takes. I know he hasn't played that much this year. And I know that the way Inter looked last year in the first 2 months, he was an incredible player. He was the best player in Serie A those first 2 months. And then he fell off the face of the earth. So this Christmas, I want to see Stefano Sensi return to his form from 2019 in August and September.
I'd love to see that too. I have like a two thing. If we're talking like if we're allowed to dream like fantasy, it's Manuel Locatelli. I absolutely love him, and I think he has a role to play in this Inter midfield. But that's not going to happen. It's completely unrealistic. My realistic, I think, which is doable, is Papu Gomez. I want to see Papu Gomez play for Inter. That is a signing that would give Inter so many dimensions. It would give Conte a lot of options in games, ahead of games. You could play a 3-4-3 with him, a 3-4-2-1 with him. You can play so many different ways with him. And I think even in a 3-5-2 with him as one of the two strikers dropping deep and linking up and allowing for runs from midfield, Papu Gomez is absolutely my dream.
And what's going to happen instead?
Well, we're going to get Graziano Pelle. I mean,
I was thinking more in terms of Papu.
Oh, he's going to Milan.
He'll come to Milan, but he won't come to
he's going to
the
Milan.
right side of.
He's going to Milan. I mean, I understand that. I mean, I'm used to this. I think we're going to get Graziano Pelle. They're going to get Papu Gomez, and then whatever happens, and then we'll have to some people will have to pretend they're shocked that Inter didn't win the Scudetto. But no, I think Papu Gomez, just because of his versatility, and I think what he offers. One thing that we've noticed about Inter under Conte, and I agree with Conte on this, he cannot play with a 3-4-1-2. It doesn't work. His system doesn't work with these players. You can drive a tank through Inter's central midfield when you play like that. So that's out of the, that idea is scrapped. He needs to have three central midfielders for there to be balance. However, when you have Papu as one of the two strikers, essentially it becomes 3-5-1-1, but not really, because Papu Gomez roams around. He moves around so much. He's so technically gifted. His vision, his craft, his passing, his crossing, he can do so many things. And that games against Spezia, for example, because like we always said, playing Milan, playing Juve, playing Lazio, playing Spezia, playing Crotone, each one of these games is worth 3 points. They're worth exactly as much. And if you want to, in teams, when they line up against Inter, the way that Spezia did, and they were really good defensively, you need to have movement from your top two strikers. Romelu Lukaku and Lautaro Martinez give you kind of movement, but they don't give you the kind of movement you need, and they lack the qualities to drop down deep and link up the way that Papu Gomez does. And that's why I think that if Inter sign Papu Gomez, they are contenders to win the Scudetto without a doubt. Although I think Juve are still miles ahead of everyone else, but then I won't be worried about finishing top 4. But so yeah, no, Papu Gomez is my absolute dream this Christmas.
Can we get a Papu dance video from you if we sign Papu?
When hell freezes over.
Tried.
Well, no. I'll tell you what. I'll do it if Fulvio does it.
Sorry, Nima, repeat the question, please.
I said, I'll do a video of the Papu Gomez Baila Como El Papu dance if you do it as well. If we sign Papu.
No. I have bad experiences with art on the social
For sure. Right. Let's move on to the part of the show where we pay tribute, rip the piss out of, and criticize someone or something heavily in the world of football, starting with the negativity with this week's Moggi, which we presented by Mr. Fulvio Santucci.
So, when I'm assigned to this part of the show, I always take you to the unbelievable stories of Italian minor football. And this, guys, is one of these days. So today, I want to tell you the story of a match that it's incredible that it was played, and it was played yesterday, so on Sunday. And it was played in the third tier of Italian football. So not the 6th or the 7th or the 8th tier, but the third tier. So professionals people, right? The match is Casertana Viterbo, two teams of the center and southern Italy, basically. So what happened? It happened that the home team at some point during the last 10 days discovered to have a great COVID cluster into the team. And they were forced to request the postponing of the match of the last week, and they obtained that because there's a rule into the third tier that allows you to spend one game, one postponed game, if you have this kind of emergency into your team. But they realized in the early weekend that they did not solve the situation before the match against Viterbo. So basically, they have a roster of 28 players, and they came out with 15 positives, tested positive to the COVID.
Wow.
So basically, a 13-player at disposal. And the rules, the current rules of the third tier on this protocol are the same of UEFA. So if you have the 13 player that are able to play, the match should be played. So Casertana asked the opponent team, Viterbo, to postpone the match, but they refused. They said it's not up to us to decide. We're in shape to play the match, so we're going to play the match. It's not up to us to decide. And basically on Sunday, they understood that they have also player with suspect symptoms of COVID, so further players, right, like 6 or 7. And they ask at least to the league. They ask at least to have an emergency control by the medical institution to test the players and give the results about the positivity of COVID, because that would have ruled out the match, because they were not available to do that. So a lot of these players, 3 or 4 of these players that want left disposal could not play because they have fever above the quota of 37.5, and another 3 players were below this quote, but had fever basically. So they were suspect of COVID. So basically, to make a long story short, the match became difficult to start, and the start was postponed of 1 hour, and there were literally the medical institution on the field to test the players on the field, on the stadium, right? And it ended up, and Casertana ended up with 9 players. So they made a list, an official list with 9 players. Was published on the social. If you want to go check 9 players without the bench, right? So all 9 players. 1 opponents were complete. 11 players plus 8 or 9 players into the bench. Of course, Casertana lost the match, like 0-3, and there was a lot of discussion about that. And the league basically didn't take any responsibility because they say we applied the UEFA protocol, and it probably the opponent team should have agreed to not play, but the president, the chairman of the opponent team, just say I already spent 2 million for playing Caserta, so I cannot pass this. I cannot avoid. I cannot skip this because I end up with losing 2 million about this. So basically it's a huge mess, but it happens in the third year of football, and it's not happening into with players of 8 or 9 years old. It's happening in the third year of football. So our match televised and sold to the abroad broadcaster, and it ended up with 9 against 11 match, and the worst part is that nobody's taking responsibility of that. But and this is the last but the best part. I mean, not the best, of course, but the best and the worst is that the 3 players that play into the match that were suspect of COVID, but could not be ruled out, or at least it's not by the law. You cannot rule out because we're below the quota of 37.5 fever, were tested positive to the COVID.
Oh, right? My God.
So basically, Casertana played a match against Viterbese, so 9 against 11, so 20 players on the pitch, then the players in the bench, then the referees, then all the stuff, and all the families involved on that. Basically, they play in a cluster because there were 2 positive players on the field for Casertana. So probably this story is not finished yet. But it's unbelievable. But believe me, this thing in the third tier of Italian football just keeps happening and happening and happening and happening. And it happened yesterday. The match was Casertana Viterbese. Just Google it if you are confident with Italian to know something more. That's of course and obviously our budget of the week.
What a mess. Right, let's move on to something much more positive. This week's Moratti, which will be presented by Mr. William Beckman.
He works a lot, he's intelligent, and he surprises people sometimes with his ideas. Not easy to find one person of this qualities.
Yeah, my Moratti is very simple. Obviously, this is a rather scary and disorienting time for most of us, no matter where we're living at the moment. Here in the UK, we had Christmas effectively cancelled by our Prime Minister at the weekend, telling us that we couldn't mix with other members of other households if you live in certain parts of the country. Cases are rising around the country. Lots of travel bans are starting to reappear. It all sort of feels like we're sort of sliding back towards March, and there's not a lot really to hang on to at the moment in terms of positivity. And so I'm going to select the one thing that's keeping me happy and sort of vaguely sane as we sort of trudge towards the end of this awful year, and that is football, because it's on every minute of every day, of every week, of every month at the moment. In every country, in every division, there's football everywhere, because of the compressed calendar is a problem in terms of the tiredness that we spoke about earlier, that the games are not always great because teams are out on their feet, everyone's injured, people are suspended, and everything's a bit boring, but it's still football, and it's a nice little constant for everyone who's stuck at home at the moment. I've got a game on at the moment in the Premier League, Chelsea West Ham, as we're recording this podcast. There was one before that. There'll be games tomorrow in Serie A. Tomorrow's Tuesday, obviously. We're back into a midweek round. There'll be games all the way through January. And sport is something that we love to get angry about, but it's something that's sort of keeping most of us afloat at the moment. So I think that's the obvious choice, I think, as we head into Christmas. So if you're feeling down, just watch Spezia Genoa or something really niche, and everything will be fine again.
course they will be watching Spezia Genoa to see Davide Ballardini coming back and making his return to Genoa, which he always does.
The tweet of the weekend was someone who tweeted a picture of him and said it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas.
Exactly.
It's the time of the year when he comes to Genoa.
By the way, Spezia Genoa is a derby. I don't know if you know about that.
But no, absolutely.
Spezia are friends with Sampdoria, so it's a derby against Genoa.
And also, we all know that, it is that this time of the year, because everybody knows that in the beginning of the season, Preziosi starts with one coach. Then in November, December, it's Ballardini. Then in February, March, it's usually time for Ivan Juric. And then he gets sacked 3 weeks later, and it's Ballardini back again until the end of the season. So I'd say we're right on time. Although this time it won't be Ivan Juric because he's doing great work over at Hellas Verona. Right, let's move on to something much more comical. This week's Frog, which will be presented by Mr. Michael Gallo.
È clamoroso! Autogol di Ranocchia!
This week's Frog comes from the match between Juventus and Atalanta on Wednesday.
Yes.
Alvaro Morata, is on a breakaway going towards the goal, Instead of taking a shot, now keep in mind there's a possibility that could have been offside later, but that's not the point here. He's got a breakaway. Instead, he decides to pass the ball, So he makes a terrible error instead of shooting, He's bailed out. The ball comes back to him. He's now got an open goal. What he decides to do is backheel the ball, and he shanks it and goes out for a goal kick. It reminded me of Balotelli with Manchester City like 7-8 years ago, if you guys remember that, when he tried that stupid backheel when he was playing in North America in like an August league. And it just was such an embarrassing moment. And it's funny because he did not have to do this. He had an open net. The goalkeeper was not even close to being like near him. It was a goal, and he decided to do some cheeky, stupid backheel, and it was embarrassing, and that cost them the 3 points because they ended up drawing the game. So Alvaro Morata is our clear-cut Frog of the week for that terrible error.
I still can't believe what I saw. Like, it was so bizarre. It was weird. It was so weird. I still don't get what happened. The whole thing, the whole sequence was just weird. So if you haven't seen that, make sure to check it out because it's like, it really is the kind of point where it's like you don't even laugh because you're just, the awkwardness of all of it is just so strong and intense. Right, that's all we had time for this week. I'd like to thank Patrick Kendrick. I'd like to thank you, Will.
Thank you, Nima. Merry Christmas, everyone, and we'll see you in 2021. And let's hope that's much less nasty, although it probably won't be. But we'll be there. We will always be there throughout thick and thin.
Yes, Mr. Fulvio Santucci.
Thank you, Nima. Thank you, guys. Wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And this time I mean it. Normally I don't mean it. This time I mean it.
Brilliant. And Mr. Michael Gallo.
Thanks for having me, guys. Buon Natale and buon anno.
Yes, for sure.
Very good.
Very good. And until next year, I'm your host, Nima Tavallaey, wishing you all 3 points, a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and sempre e solo Forza Inter.